So, Aisha, almost 138,000 samples have been tested. That figure gives us this number of confirmed cases. That's 3,091. What would interest you with this dashboard is that the Greater Accra region accounts for a little over 83% of the total cases. Greater Accra region has 2,579 cases, followed by the Ashanti region. The gap is so wide, 165 cases right there. That's what you see. That's how it really looks like on your screens. Now, if you're concerned also about the hotspots because of the number of cases in the Greater Accra region, we zeroed in there, and this is how it looks like. So the hotspots, this big yellow circle here on the hotspots map on the Ghana Health Services website represents Adenta, Lanquantanan, Adenta, Medina. We have Baolacia as well captured in that big circle. Parts of Dome as well captured there. Now that also goes into the American House area, parts of East Legon. You see also Mamobi, that's the second biggest yellow circle down there as well. And then you have Sakama, Jonkobri, Mpoase, and then also Bawe. You have Ablikuma also captured there, Pokwase, some part of Ga West, and then also some part of Ofankor, and then Dome area. So that's how the hotspot picture looks like for the Greater Accra region, accounting for over 83% of the 3,091 total cases that we have. That's how it looks like. Now, if you're concerned about the continental picture of this particular virus, this is how it looks like. 52,175 cases have been recorded on the continent. Now, death cases, we understand 2,024 total deaths on the continent, and the recoveries also 17,819. This is according to the Africa CDC dashboard. This is also dedicated by the African Union to update the continent on what's going on. Now, look at where Ghana is in terms of rankings, specifically on case count. South Africa leads on the continent with 7,808 positive cases confirmed. Egypt, 7,588. Morocco, 5,550. Algeria follows with 5,182. Nigeria, 3,145. And Ghana follows there with 3,091 cases. And then Cameroon as well. This data also was sourced from the Africa CDC dashboard. That's how the picture looks like. But we keep hearing the expression that we are at our peak. We've hit our peak, and all things being equal, behavioral changes and others, we should see this curve decline. What exactly do we mean if we say that we're at our peak? We want to understand this a bit further. And Dr. Michael also is a virologist, also a researcher at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research. He joins us via Skype. Doc, thank you. Good evening to you. We see cases rising, and we're told that we are at our peak. What exactly do we mean if we say that Ghana is at the peak of this viral infection?
Yeah, good evening to your viewers. So if you talk about the peak, hitting the peak, you have to know what we mean by hitting the peak. There are two graphs you can draw for this. We have an epidemic curve graph, which is based on observed values. That is the number of positives or the new cases you are getting every day. And then you can plot your epidemic curve, which is based on predicted values, which is what values which are unseen, but you can predict these values using a model. So normally, because when this disease starts in your country, one is that you have not tested majority of your population. So you have a few samples on your hand, a few numbers you test. But what statisticians do is that you want to use these few numbers to project how the virus will behave and when you will peak and when the peak will drop. And this is unseen, but you have to use your data to predict or to model how it will appear. The graphs that we have seen so far, which is published on the website, these are graphs which are based on observed values. And I want to believe that about 60% of the data points are from Accra. And I think 30% could be from Kumasi and 10% could be from the other countries. So the number of tests done is, you can only project the observed values to either Accra, maybe somehow to Kumasi, but not to the whole Ghana. So the data itself is speaking mostly to the places where you have majority of cases. The next thing is that when you have this data and if you want to model and predict, your model will apply mainly to the places where you have your data coming from. Ideally, you want to have an equal representation of the tested samples across the regions. And then you plot this using the observed values and then use a model. There are two models that I know. We have the growth model and then we have the cell model, where you use the susceptible, exposed, infected, and then the recovery people to predict. So when you use the cell model, you input the values, you input the observed data, and then you can tell whether you are in the peak or the peak has happened or you are yet to get a peak. So use this model to tell you how things will be using a few samples on your hand.
Great. The point is that we have just been testing backlogs. I mean, from what we do understand, the backlogs were cleared by end of today. We don't have any more backlogs. So if this peak curve you're talking about is anything to go by, it's with the backlog figures. It means we don't even know what the picture is now as we speak, is it?
Exactly. So if you want to use the predicted values, you have to, or maybe the observed, you have to use real-time incident cases. So every day, how many new cases you get every day. And then you plot the days on the x-axis, and then you plot the new cases you get on the y-axis. And then you can put this one in your model to make your prediction. If you don't do that, what will happen is that you could predict 3 weeks behind because the data points you are using are lagged data points. But this is where the problem could
But
be.
if we deal with predictions, are we not treading on some slippery ground? Because epidemiology is not a science of certainties, and I know you know this. So why do we go into predictions?
You do predictions because in statistics, you use few data to tell how the whole picture will look like whilst you monitor. Ideally, if you want to use the values which are plotted on the graph, you should test about 70% of Ghanaians. And then you should test at a point that the virus has run deeply into the country, which nobody can do that. You can't test 70% of your population. It's almost impossible. So you use a few samples that you test to make a prediction of how the situation looks like. And in most times, if your model works very well, you are likely to be 80 to 90% sure that whatever you plot out there could be what will happen. I mean, it could be the setting. This is why all over the world, many statisticians are creating epidemic curve models, and they are making predictions and can tell you when they are at the peak, when they are declining. And then they observe that eventually their observed values will follow exactly through the peak, and then they can determine what is happening. But even that, the importance of using new cases per day to create that graph is very, very crucial. If you don't do that, you create a model or you put in a graph that will lag. We don't know what will happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's possible we can have 2 times the number of new cases occurring in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely. And that's actually where the concern is.
Yes, and you cannot really tell. So I think ideally, getting new data points will help the statisticians and to work. And I know the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences are creating that model and are trying to work with the ministry to get this new data point, which will have the real-time values to make the prediction to guide us as to where we are and where we are likely to be.
I'd want to thank you so much for this very important contribution to our conversation this evening. Dr. Michael Owusu, grateful.
You're welcome.
Great. That's Dr. Michael Owusu, is a researcher at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research and also a lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Yeah.